They said my life was like dirty rags. They said I had to hate the fags. Not the sinner, just the sin. In practice, though, I noticed that distinction seemed to be awfully thin. I was 17 years old, trying to make sense of the world, riddled with anxiety, bravado, and naivety in a job selling washers and cookers, hi-fi and TV to gullible suckers who trusted me, who never knew we ripped them off with a smile and a handshake and a sideways cough, chasing a commission to supplement our pay to make our wages right and keep the bank manager at bay. A money-making scheme with a cynical theme, but I couldn't sleep at night. It just wasn't right. My conscience couldn't take it the way I had to fake it, persuading them that it's a steal. Trained in clever ways to close the deal, manipulative tricks to establish rapport, betraying the trust of the marks in the store. I hated that job because it made me a liar. But in Thatcher's Britain, my prospects were dire, so every day I'd make the gullible pay for crap with a smile and a handshake to send them on their way. I felt like a jerk. I hated that job. But after work, I could stop conning the world and be with my girl, my first true love, the girl of my dreams. Forgetting retail schemes, sales targets, and lies, I'd lose myself in her beautiful eyes, her come to bed eyes, and her teenage sighs, her lovely face, her warm embrace, and life was worth living, and life was worth giving all that I had, all I could be. You may think me mad, but all I could see was my love, was my girl. She completed my world. She made it all worth it. My work life was shit, but with her, life was grand. As we dreamed and we planned of long decades together, we swore that we'd never be apart. We'd never split. Until we did. And then I really felt like shit. I was lost. I felt bereft. I felt alone. My love had left. My life's meaning was overthrown. There was no purpose that I could see. And that's when the bastards got me. It's often kids they convert, or the hurt, or those in need, those who bleed. An easy catch to hook for a platitudinous creed, a pastor's greed, and a lying ancient book. Unassailable so long as you don't look too deep. Come, join the sheep, join the flock. Then they turn their metaphorical key in your psychological lock, and your mind's no longer free. That's how the bastards got me. They promised me love from heaven above. In a platonic way, it was different, but hey, it hits the spot. And my self-esteem was shot. I was welcomed and cared for. It all felt so nice. Just as long as I paid the religious price, the price of admission to make it legit. I had to believe all their crazy bullshit. They called me ripe for harvest. What they meant was desperate, vulnerable and needy. It's evangelical double talk, exploitative and seedy, abusive targeting of those in need. They offer platitudes to those in pain. They use the same techniques I'd learned to sell, but I refuse to see, refuse to smell the stench of their deception, their malevolent intention. They filled me with cheap tricks and social skills, promising they'd wash away all ills if only I'd believe. Allow them to relieve me of all thoughts of disbelief and sink my thoughts into their dogma and their creed. They said my life was like dirty rags. They said I had to hate the fags. Not the sinner, just the sin. In practice, though, I noticed that distinction seemed to be awfully thin. That narrow path they bid me take to leave behind, that fiery lake, to find that narrow door where saints had trod so long before. My salvation depended on such vile doctrine. I did the same at work, but at least I never claimed moral high ground. Deep down, I was ashamed of what I did. They seemed to revel in the power they had over a naive, grieving kid, grieving the love I thought was mine, the love I thought would outlast time. My dreams had all been ripped apart. She broke my heart. And then the bastards got me. They called belief in the Big Bang particularly tragic. God spoke some words and all was made. And no, it wasn't magic. They spoke of jumbo jets and hurricanes in scrapyards and of watches on the sand. Analogies and metaphors presented with no hint of shame as though they're proof of God's almighty hand. At 17, I didn't know, still a child. I couldn't I couldn't hope to make it plain the difference between hurricane and evolution. That teenage me, so hurt, so sad, so desperate not to feel so bad, devoured every word they said, believing I'd be happy once I'm dead. So I abandoned all I knew, too frightened to accept as true the science facts I'd learned at school, too terrified to be that fool who in his heart said there's no God. A slanderous Christian lie designed to appeal to the naive mind, and that I was, naive as fuck. The bastards probably couldn't believe their luck. They'd seen me coming and no mistake. I was too blind to notice that it was completely fake, too blind to see they suckered me with their tall tales of God above and promises of post-mortem love. Eternal bliss they promised me if I'd accept that fantasy. I was such good ground for their seed of ignorance and bigotry, of hatred and misogyny, the moral filth, ironically pretending to be love. If you don't fit, they'll shove you under the bus without a second glance. So you'd better believe with all your heart. If not, then leave. Be apart from Jesus, who you'll never know, and in the end, to hell you'll go. Well, that carrot and stick did the trick. Fellowship or flame, those options really aren't the same. And when you're ripe for harvest, the evangelist is at his best. With manipulative skill, he'll reel you in until you even censor your own thoughts. That's when they know you're truly caught, judged in thought and word and deed, imprisoned by a bullshit creed. With every thought that might have led you back to reason, you label its satanic attack as treason. Get thee behind me, Satan. Let me be. I'm happy in my chains of bigotry. I hated gays and learned to disagree with evolution and equality, refusing now to question pastor's word as though his voice was all I ever heard. I read the Bible old and new, believing every word was true. I had to, or I'd burn. And in that lake of fire, I'd yearn for all eternity in shame for mercy that never came. So I rejected all my doubts for fear that they might lead me out. Ignored the archaeology I'd learned because it didn't match with Noah's flood. Big Bang cosmology's a lie. Young Earth creationist, that's what tells us why we're here. Our purpose is so clear, to worship God or lie in flames of fear. Don't doubt, the devil's always near. The bastards kept me through my youth, so certain that I'd found the truth, too frightened to consider the views of any other, still censoring each thought I caught that could have led to doubt so fraught with terror of damnation. Intellectual stagnation that tightly locked my doubts away, reading my Bible every day, refusing to acknowledge the wickedness on almost every page. I knew what I'd read, that with even a shred of doubt I'd be damned, till the vault in my head full of thoughts of a blasphemous kind became too crammed. The things that I saw in the church, the fruits of the Spirit so flawed as they lurch from sin to sin, self-righteous and smug as they grin, assured of their salvation, taking pleasure in dreams about damnation of the rest. believing themselves to be the best, God's chosen. They were saved. But the malice they displayed made me want to turn away when they lied about each other, claiming guidance as they'd smother the truth that didn't suit them. The vault door began to weaken. Cracks appeared. All those Bible stories screaming to be heard, and I no longer could ignore the scripture that I'd read before. Down fell the door to the vault in my mind. I could hold it no more. Though still frightened, I peered inside, determined no longer to hide. I soon would be amazed at what I'd find. I wondered how I could have been so naive. Genocide and slavery, gaslighting and rape, all sanctioned, even ordered by this God of perfect love. Arbitrary punishments, capricious twists of fate, hypocrisy, failed prophecy, sadism and hate. The devaluing of women only useful when they breed for callous, selfish men to sow their seed. And I realized, in trembling fear, shredding many a heartfelt tear, that this God was far from good. No one with integrity could support his vile crimes. And for the first of many times I realized that I would burn, that I must turn away. That though I'd suffer for all eternity, I could not abandon my integrity. Terrified of hell, but I knew all too well that might does not make right. If he damns me, then so be it. But this God's a cruel, sadistic piece of shit. I thought a lot for 2 more years, still as a believer, convinced of my damnation, but my resolve didn't waver. I couldn't stop him damning me, but I could hang on to my integrity. And something else was plain to see. I no longer had to censor. I was free. Free to think, free to reflect, free to be more circumspect. All the knowledge I'd rejected flooded back as I reflected on the implausibility of the flood and the passion of the deity. And over time, I understood that grieving teenager who could not see how to be free. And I realized just how the bastards got me. They said there's no morality without Christianity, but if you think that about the human throng, a group to which you belong, then you're not talking about me, you're describing yourself. And if that's the only thing keeping you from the moral things you'd clearly rather do, then I'm glad you're a Christian. You carry on. I'll support anything that keeps you from being such a twat. They told me that God loved me, that he'd always have my back, and only condemn me to hell if I didn't love him back. They said that Jesus died for me, crucified on Calvary, but never once did they explain how, if the martyr lives again, becoming king of everything, that's not sacrifice, not really, it's merely spin. Insisting that it's personal, pretending that we owe a debt to you, or rather to the clergy, they're the ones who get the gold. Why would God need my salary? Perhaps that's why he gives it to the priest to hold the gold, to carry like a salary. That 10% from me and you can soon accrue. If 50 of the flock give 10%, the pastor could afford 5 times the rent than you and I could ever dream. And what if there's 100 or 1,000 in the church? It's odd how churches never say in detail what they do with all that pay. They may name the odd charity, but do you know the whole story about the money they collect? Is it the same in every sect? What does your pastor do? Do you know? Do you care? Do you even give a shit? Faith exists because of mystery. But how can that be when the pastor said to me he knows the mind of God? He knows why all the Midianites are dead. He understands, at least that's what he said. So it's not such a mystery unless we come to see, as now it seems to me, that whatever the pastor wants to be is what he tells us that this God has said. Over time, I came to know, and then decided that I'd show because I want society to grow. The God of Abraham's not a shit. He's just a myth that doesn't fit the modern world because we know too much. And that's when the bastards lost me.